Have you ever felt ancient places breathe when the daylight fades? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, where stone, sand, and sky still remember what the world forgot. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell us where and what time you're watching from. Now, let's walk the hidden paths where giants, pillars, and old fire still wait in the dust. The face that woke at dustfall. There are places where the earth looks like it has only just cooled, where the air still smells faintly of ash, and the hills rise like the backs of sleeping beasts. Balochistan is one of them. Between its folded mountains and sunburnt plains lies a silence so wide it feels like distance itself. The land is red and gray and gold, streaked with veins of stone that shimmer at dusk. Nothing grows easily here. Nothing moves without reason. And yet, on the edge of the Hingal Desert, where the horizon meets heat and wind, there is something that looks almost alive. It rises from the sandstone like a frozen wave, 40 meters high, its surface rough and cracked, its shape unmistakable, even from miles away. A face, broad, solemn, tilted slightly toward the horizon, the curve of a brow, the hollow of an eye, the faint trace of a mouth caught between word and silence. The locals call it the stone giant, but the older ones, those who still remember the stories whispered at firesides, call it something else. The face that woke at dustfall. You arrive just as the light begins to fade. The desert glows with that strange, impossible color that happens only once each day, when gold meets rose, when day forgets to end. The wind is low, carrying the scent of dust and salt from the distant Makran coast. The ground crackles beneath your boots. You can feel the heat still rising from the sand, though the sun has already slipped behind the hills. The face stands motionless ahead, its features sharpened by shadow. It doesn't look carved, it looks formed, as if the wind and the years themselves shaped it into something that once remembered being human. You step closer, the scale of it overwhelms you. The lines are too precise to be chance, too organic to be planned. The left eye socket, if that's what it is, gazes toward the horizon. The mouth seems caught mid-breath. You reach out, touching the rough stone. It's still warm from the day's heat. Tiny flakes crumble under your fingertips. A faint vibration moves through the rock, almost like a heartbeat. You pull your hand away and listen. The desert holds its breath. The silence is absolute, but beneath it, something hums. The elders of the nearby village at Nani Mandir say the face turns ever so slightly each century, following the sun. They say that at dustfall, when the sky burns orange and violet, the air around it sings, a song no one can quite remember, but all have felt. You sit at its base as the light fades. The shadow of the giant stretches across the plain, touching the edge of the dry riverbed. The first stars appear above. The desert cools quickly now, the air carrying a metallic chill. The wind shifts, soft, almost human, and then you hear it. Not a sound exactly, but a vibration. Low, deep, slow as breath. The air around the face thickens, trembling faintly. The hum rises from the ground, through your spine, through the stone. The desert darkens further. The first grains of sand begin to lift from the ground, swirling in slow spirals. The hum deepens, and the face, just slightly, moves. Not enough to see, only enough to feel. A pulse passes through the air. The sand around its base stirs, lifting in small arcs like breath exhaled. The sound grows stronger, forming something close to a rhythm. 3 tones, low, lower, lowest. The stars shimmer above, reflecting faintly in the hollowed eyes of the giant. The ancients believed this was not a statue, not an idol, but a remnant of something before time. A witness left standing when the first cities turned to dust. They said it wasn't sleeping, it was listening. Listening for the voice that once called its name. The hum continues. You close your eyes. It isn't frightening. It's steady, familiar, like the slow beat of the earth itself. You think of how wind carves mountains, how stone remembers shape. You think of the way every ruin becomes part of the land again, and how faces, whether human or carved, always turn toward the light. The sound grows until you can feel it in your chest. Then, slowly, it changes. It becomes a tone, clear, soft, sustained. It isn't coming from the ground now, but from the stone itself. The face hums. The air quivers with it, turning sound into movement, movement into heat. The sand shivers at your feet. Then, within the hum, another voice emerges, higher, lighter, trembling like a thread of wind drawn across glass. It weaves around the deeper tone, building harmony. You realize what you're hearing isn't the voice of a god or ghost. It's the desert itself, responding. The dunes hum back, the cliffs answer. The whole valley becomes an echo chamber for something older than language. And in the heart of it all, the face breathes. A slow exhale of dust rises from its lips, catching the moonlight. The particles glitter and drift upward like sparks. You open your eyes fully now. The air ripples faintly like heat. The stone glows pale gold, veins of light running through cracks in its surface. The face seems alive, but not in the way of flesh, in the way of memory, a thing recalling its purpose. And then, softly, a single word seems to form, not spoken, but resonated through the hum itself. Stay. The wind stills, the hum fades to a whisper. The desert exhales again, this time quieter. You sit there long after the sound dies, the stone cooling beneath your hand, the stars wheeling above in their patient, ancient dance. The face watches the horizon, its features still and eternal once more, but you can't shake the feeling that it has seen you, that something vast and wordless has opened its eyes, if only for a moment, to remember the shape of its own silence. Night in Balakistan doesn't fall, it unfolds. The sky stretches wider, the stars burn closer, the desert cools until the air feels thinner than breath. But the face remains warm, not from the sun, but from memory. You sit at its base long after the hum has faded. The sand grows cold beneath you, every grain catching the faint glow of the rising moon. The desert sounds return slowly, a distant fox cry, wind brushing over broken shale, the hush of shifting dunes. Yet beneath all of it, there is still a pulse, a rhythm that thrums through the ground like the heartbeat of something sleeping beneath the earth. You touch the stone again. It no longer vibrates, but it holds the echo of the hum like warmth trapped in old clay. The lines on its surface look different now, not random, but deliberate. You lean closer. The grooves curve in spirals, in circles, in waves. Some form patterns like water, some like wind, some connect to one another, forming a constellation carved into the giant's cheek. They glimmer faintly, as though remembering the light that moved through them moments before. A desert breeze lifts dust into the air. The grains shimmer as they swirl upward, forming tiny eddies around the giant's face. They linger, drawn toward faint warmth, and settle again in new shapes. As if the desert itself is trying to rewrite the story on stone, you stand, stepping back far enough to see the giant as a whole. The moonlight reveals its scale, the height of 5 men, the width of a small house, carved with precision no wind or water could match. The ancients must have shaped it. But why? And why here, in a valley so barren that even footprints vanish by morning? The elders believe the valley was once a lake, a calm mirror where the mountains reflected perfectly. And in those still waters, the face watched the sky. Maybe it was carved to guard the lake. Maybe it was carved to remember it. Or maybe it predates even the water, a remnant of a time when the world shaped itself into symbols and then forgot why. The night deepens. The stars gather in rivers overhead. The desert becomes ocean, waves of darkness rolling across sand instead of water. And then it happens again. A sound, faint this time, not the hum, something higher, thinner, softer. You hold your breath. The sound grows, a thread of tone drifting in the air like smoke. It's coming from the stone, but it's different than before. Not a call, not a warning, a song. A melody so delicate you can barely hear it, but the desert responds instantly. The dunes tremble. Tiny avalanches spill down their sides, the wind circles in patterns, lifting dust into spirals. The whole valley resonates with the note, as though the land has been waiting for this frequency to awaken something inside it. The face glows faintly again. Not gold this time, but silver. Moonlight flows across its features like water, filling the hollowed eyes, and then, for the briefest moment, they glint, reflect, shine. You blink. The light is gone, but the impression remains that something looked back. The tone fades into the night wind. Silence returns, soft and wide and heavy. You sit once more, your back against the stone. The ground is cold, but the giant feels steady behind you, like a wall built to hold the horizon in place. The desert is still now. The dunes shine like frozen waves. The moon hangs above everything like a lantern left burning for travelers who never came. You close your eyes. The echo of the melody lingers, circling your thoughts, deepening into something like understanding. The face doesn't wake often. It wakes when the desert shifts in certain ways, when the wind hits exact angles, when the moon sits low enough in the sky to kindle the old inscriptions. It wakes when the world remembers itself. When you open your eyes again, dawn is approaching. The sky brightens at the edges, a thin seam of dim red spreading along the horizon. The sand slowly changes color, shifting from blue to gray to faint gold. The desert begins to warm, and the giant cools. Its features fade back into stillness. The lines lose their glow. The stone darkens. By the time the sun peaks above the mountains, the face looks lifeless again, a curiosity of erosion, a relic of long-forgotten purpose. But you know better. You stand and dust the sand from your clothes. The early light sharpens the edges of the giant's features, giving it a solemn, ancient dignity. Wind stirs. It brushes past your ears, and for just a heartbeat you swear you hear it again. A single low hum, buried beneath everything. A memory of a memory. You smile. You step back into the world. Your shadow stretches long across the sand. The face watches the horizon, silent, patient, eternal, waiting for the next dustfall, the next wind, the next melody. The desert remembers. It will wake again. Not for you, not for any one person, but because the earth, every so often, needs to speak. And this stone, this giant carved by time, wind, and something more, is its mouth. As you walk away, the sun fully rises. The desert glows. The valley exhales. Behind you still is carved eternity. The face keeps watching, its silence deeper now, its memory longer, its story unfinished, its hum waiting to return. The steps that climbed the wind. The mountains rose in soft blue layers, each ridge fading gently into the next, as though the world had exhaled and forgotten to pull the breath back in. Morning mist coiled along the valleys, drifting with the slow patience of something ancient and unhurried. Every leaf on every bamboo stalk shimmered with thin beads of dew, catching the faint gold of a rising sun. Somewhere between those folds of cloud and stone stood a structure that did not behave like the rest of the world. It did not weather. It did not crumble. It did not fade or change with the seasons. It simply waited, still and impossibly old. The people who lived in the scattered villages below rarely spoke of it, but when they did, their voices softened, as if the wind itself were listening. They called it the Dragon's Back Stair, a name whispered with the same quiet reverence reserved for mountains, ancestors, and dreams that never fully leave a person. From afar, the stair looked like the ridge of a giant resting beneath the sky, stone vertebrae rising one after another, climbing in perfect rhythm toward the clouds. The top could never be seen. Mist always hid the final steps, curling protectively around whatever waited there. No one claimed to have reached the top, not in living memory, not in written memory, not in the stories told at night, but the stair remained, waiting for someone or something to try. You reached the base of the stair just as the sun broke over the horizon. The light touched the first step gently, and the stone shimmered faintly, as though waking from its own long sleep. A cool wind drifted upward, brushing your face with the scent of moss, cedar, and distant rain. You knelt and ran your hand across the first step. It was smoother than river rock, cooler than morning air, and beneath your palm there was the faintest tremor, subtle as a heartbeat, buried beneath stone. The villagers had warned you. It listens. You hadn't known what they meant until now. The carvings along the edge of the step were delicate and strange, spiraling lines that curled like the path of falling leaves, or the eddies of air around the wings of a bird, patterns too fluid to have been chiseled by human hands without years of impossible patience. The wind stirred. It moved past your ear in a single soft stream, almost like breath. You rose and placed your foot on the first step. The tremor beneath the stone grew warmer. Nothing dramatic happened. No shift, no noise, no mythical glow. But the air changed in a way you could feel in your bones. It became lighter, thinner, as though your body weighed slightly less than it had a moment before. You took another step, then another. The world behind you faded into a blur of green and gold. The stair curved ahead, each step rising just high enough to require effort, but never enough to exhaust. It was as if the stair wanted you to climb, but gently, quietly, without rush. As you rose higher, the wind began to change. It stopped behaving like something that traveled from one place to another. Instead, it began to behave like something alive. It circled the stair in long, patient swirls, brushing past your shoulders, drifting ahead of you, then returning. It carried no chill, no scent, no urgency, only presence. A sound moved through it. A soft hum, so low you were unsure if it existed in the air or only inside your chest. The vibration rolled through the stone, gently at first, then with growing certainty, like a voice clearing itself after many silent years. The mist parted slightly. The next stretch of steps glowed faintly beneath it. You noticed the carvings on this section of stone were different, sharper, more deliberate, lines that converged and flowed like the currents of a river or the swirling paths of a storm. The stone seemed to pulse with them, as if echoing a memory of something it once held. You rested your hand on the step. The hum deepened. The mountain seemed to breathe out. Wind lifted from all sides, swirling slowly upward, following the path of the stair, as if drawn by the carvings themselves. You watched loose petals from distant blossoms rise into the air, riding the currents higher and higher, until they vanished into mist. The stair was calling the wind, and the wind was answering. You continued upward. The hum shifted with each step, changing tone subtly, as though the stair were tuning itself around you. The air grew warmer. The light grew brighter, even though the sun remained hidden behind the ridge. You felt it more than you saw it, a glow behind the mist, a radiance that existed without a source. By the time you reached the 15th step, the world below was gone entirely. The stair rose into a river of pale white cloud, and the wind moved around you in slow spirals, carrying threads of sound that felt like half-formed voices. Not speech, not whispers, something simpler, just meaning. You reached out your hand again, touched the stone. The vibration responded instantly, and then, quietly, almost shyly, the wind gathered at your ear and shaped a single clear note, soft, pure, so brief you wondered if you imagined it. But the stair heard. The carvings lit as though a thin fire moved through them. Not bright, just a faint glow, warm as lantern light filtered through silk. It traveled upward step by step, curving into the mist like a long exhale. You stepped into the glow. The air shifted again. The hum grew steady. Even your heartbeat seemed to fall into rhythm with it. The mist peeled back one more layer, just enough to show the next rise of steps, steeper now, narrower, leading toward a natural stone archway, barely visible through the drifting white. A shape hovered in the mist beneath it, a long curve of stone, like the bent rib of a creature older than memory. The wind stirred, brushing your shoulders gently, almost like a hand guiding you forward. You stepped closer. The hum deepened, the glow intensified, the stone beneath your feet warmed. Something was waiting above. Something patient, something awake, and as you moved toward the arch of the next ascent, the wind gathered itself one more time, rose along the stair, in a slow spiral, and carried with it the faintest suggestion of a word, not spoken, not breathed, simply shaped by the movement of air, a word that felt like a beginning. Come. The mist gathered close around your shoulders as you stepped toward the arch. It flowed like silk pulled by an unseen hand, folding around the stone ribs and drifting upward in soft breaths. The glow beneath your feet continued its patient pulse, dim, then warm, then dim again, like the memory of a heartbeat echoing through the mountain. Every sound of the world below had vanished. No birds, no bamboo rustle, no distant running water. Only the hum remained, deep and steady, rising through the stone and into your bones, as though it had been waiting centuries to be heard again. You stepped beneath the arch. Everything changed. The air thickened, not heavy, but deep, like stepping into a pool of warm water. It wrapped around your body with a gentleness that felt almost intentional. The mist pulled back slowly, unveiling the next length of stairs, narrower, more intricate, each step carved with tighter spirals and sharper lines. Above them the wind folded inward, forming a long, slow-moving column of shimmering silver. It rose higher than the arch, curving upward into the clouds, pulsing softly with each change in the hum. The stair was no longer rising toward the mountain, it was rising toward the wind. You placed your hand on the next step. It shifted under your touch, not a movement of stone, a movement of sound. A tone rose through the stair, soft and smooth, sliding upward in a perfect sweep. The wind responded instantly. It tightened its spiral, pulling strands of mist upward like threads. The entire structure began to vibrate with quiet resonance, carved lines glowing with warm, pale light. It felt like standing inside the throat of the world. Every breath moved through the mountain. Every vibration traveled through the wind, and the stair was the bridge between them. You climbed again. 1 step, 2, 3. With each rise the world shifted. Gravity softened, just enough to make your legs feel lighter. The air warmed, as though the atmosphere was thinning around you. The hum deepened, and the wind spiraled closer, touching the stone, the mist, even your skin with a slow, deliberate curiosity. Higher, higher, higher still. The arch faded below. The world dissolved into light and movement. And then, just ahead, the steps changed once more. The next rise of stone was carved with patterns completely unlike the ones below. These spirals were circular, looping inward toward the center of each step. The grooves were deeper, the glow brighter. A faint heat radiated from them, warming your fingers and cheeks. As you touched one of the symbols, a shiver passed through the stair, a resonance that rolled upward, step by step, like a breath being drawn through a flute. The wind slowed, the mist parted, and the sky above revealed itself in a way you had never seen before. Not blue, not white, but luminous. A soft silver glow spread across the heavens, shimmering in gentle waves, as though the world above the clouds was woven from moving light. Stars flickered faintly, even though it was still day. For a moment, the wind fell completely still. You reached the next platform, a landing carved into the spine of the ridge. From here the stair changed direction slightly, curving left along the cliff face. The steps ahead were narrower, arranged like the vertebrae of a creature climbing into the sky. Each one radiated a warm golden light that pulsed with the hum of the mountain. At the center of the platform stood a single pillar of stone, simple, round, and covered in the same swirling lines as the steps. You touched it, the world inhaled. Wind rushed downward from above, folding around the pillar, around you, around the landing. The hum rose from below, deep and powerful. The entire mountain seemed to gather itself. Then the pillar glowed, bright, sudden, alive. Mist was pulled into its surface, spiraling into the carvings like ink drawn into water. The lines flared white, then blue, then pale gold. A low tone rolled outward from it, soft but vast, spreading into the wind and climbing the stair like a whisper carried through stone. The air shifted, the stair answered. A faint glow rippled upward along the steps, carving by carving, curve by curve, until the light disappeared into the mist above. The path was awake. You took another step, another. The wind followed your movements now, changing direction each time your foot met stone. It curled outward when you paused, folded inward when you stepped forward. It felt almost like walking beside a companion, a presence that moved not by sight or sound, but by intention. Far above, the mist parted in a long, drifting veil. You stopped. There, suspended between cloud and stone, was the silhouette of something enormous, a curve of rock rising like the crest of a wave, a shape carved with impossible precision, a sculpture that did not resemble a human, or an animal, or anything the world below would understand. It was a form built from the memory of wind, long arcs, soft bends, flowing lines that captured motion even in stillness, and in the center of that shape, just visible now that the mist retreated, was a circular opening carved through the stone. A gateway, perfectly round, perfectly smooth. The wind moved through it, slow, steady, endless. Each gust passed through the stone ring and emerged in a different pitch, higher, lower, gentler, stronger, creating a sound like chimes that had no physical form. You climbed until the gateway towered above you, a ring of stone as tall as a tree, carved so smoothly it looked untouched by time. The wind inside it shimmered, visible only as a distortion in the air, a ripple like heat above sand. You stepped closer. The hum rose once more, not from the stair this time, but from somewhere beyond the ring. A deep, soft resonance, slow and patient, like the rhythm of breath in a sleeping giant. You placed your hand on the edge of the stone. The world hushed. The wind stopped moving. The mist hung still in the air. Even your heartbeat seemed to soften, matched to the vibration flowing through the ring. And then, from the center of the gateway, light bloomed. A soft glow, pale and steady, filling the circular space like a rising moon. It grew brighter, spreading outward in a slow expanding wave, until the entire ring radiated with warm golden light. The wind sighed, a long gentle exhale that wrapped around your shoulders like a cloak. A pulse echoed through the stair, rolling downward into the mountain. Another followed it, then another. The ring brightened, and from within the light came the shape of something moving. Not a figure, not a creature, but a pattern. Wind, made visible, shaping itself into spirals, curves, currents, each one forming and dissolving in constant motion. The mountain hummed in response. The air trembled. The mist surged forward, then withdrew again, as if bowing to something old and familiar. The wind gathered at your ear, gentle, careful, quiet, and for the briefest moment, the air formed another word, soft as breath, warm as memory, spoken in a language of motion. Remember. The light dimmed, the wind calmed, the stairs softened beneath your feet. You stepped back from the ring. The mist flowed in, closing the gateway in a slow drifting veil, hiding its glow again. The wind settled into a soft, steady current, warm and constant, brushing past your hands as though in farewell. You turned downward. The stair hummed gently beneath your boots. Each step glowed faintly in your wake, the light fading after you passed, like the last brush of a lantern carried through night. The mountain held its breath once more. The mist curled around the arch. The wind withdrew into silence, and as you descended into the world below, you felt the hum remain inside you, a quiet, rhythmic echo, steady as the pulse of a sleeping world, carried on every breath you took. The stair behind you vanished into fog. The wind curled one last time around your shoulders, and in that soft, receding whisper, you could hear a promise the mountain would keep forever. The wind remembers you now. The tower that grew from the sea. The sea around the Faroes keeps its own hours. It wakes slowly, in long, patient movement, tides arriving like breaths that remember 1,000 winters. Mist rolls over basalt cliffs and slips between stacked stone like silk. The air tastes of salt and peat, and gulls wheel in thin cries that echo across the faces of islands that have learned to listen. Far off the main islands, where water runs deep and the wind plays with its long gray hair, a single tower rises from the Atlantic like a thought the ocean would not relinquish. From a distance it looks like a column of night itself, black basalt stacked in impossible balance, crowned with green and crowned again with the pale white of sea spray. The locals call it Helgafjord, in whispers and half-remembered tales, the tower that grew from the sea. You approach in dawn light. The boat rocks soft as a cradle, the oars tapping a slow rhythm against salt-gloss wood. Water spills and hushes. Your breath forms small silver clouds in the cold air. As you draw near the sea stack, the world narrows to the sound of the boat's hull, and the wind pulling at the hood of your jacket. The tower rises, step after step of stone, each level ringed with barnacles and old shells like the necklaces of some deep, patient thing. At its base the water hisses, white-black collisions of wave and rock. Seabirds crowd along thin ledges, small shapes against a skin of basalt. From the surface the tower appears almost carved, so precise are the terraces and hollows that line its flanks. Looking up you can imagine stairs. Looking closer, you find grooves where hands might have once found purchase. The stone is not smooth, it is written upon. Channels cut by waves and time forming patterns that trace the long history of tide and weather. The islanders tell you it was not fashioned by hands, but by agreement. The first storm struck, they say, and the tower refused to be broken. The ocean pressed, and the rock decided to rise. That is their way of saying what cannot be said plainly, that some places are made from resistance and endurance, and the land grows what the sea teaches it to become. You tie your boat to a low cleft and climb. The stairs cut into the rock are preserved in places where softer stone fell away, and you find wet footings to hold your weight as you pull yourself up. Salt stings in your nose. Your palms smell of brine. Under your boots the basalt is cold and alive, flecked with quartz that flashes like caught stars. Hear the bird calls. They are a loose, bright percussion against the constant drum of surf. Halfway up, a ledge frames a shallow pool, glass smooth and filled with the tide's memory. In it, clouds reflect like white ships adrift. The pool edges are carved with faint symbols, circles within circles, marks of rope and netting, the worn impression of fingers that linger there as though the rock itself remembers the palms that touched it. You sit at that pool and wait. The wind folds around you, not sharp but weathered, carrying a sound that is not quite a tone, more like the soft leaning of an instrument warming to pitch. When the stone reaches you, you find it speaks the old language of weather, a low vibration you feel in your ribs more than you hear with your ears. Place a hand upon the basalt and you will feel the echo of long tides, the slow settling of creatures beneath the water, the measured pulse of currents that have run this coast for centuries. The tower keeps these things, the people say. It is a ledger of sea and storm. Climbing higher, the terraces become narrow. Seaweeds cling in damp curtains. Puffins watch you with small round curiosity, their beaks like painted matches. The higher you go, the quieter the world grows. Not because sound ends, but because it becomes deliberate. Each gust carries a syllable. Each splash at the base writes a line in the air. The tower accepts them all, and returns a hush that is full of sense. Near the summit, a ring of carved gravels forms a worn floor where moss and grass have taken root. This summit crown is a small, sheltered place, ringed by stone and lapped by sky. Here the stones are different, not only basalt but a lighter veined rock, a seam of something older and more severe running through the crown like a spine. On these stones the carvings are clearest, delicate grooves that curve in spirals and radiate outward, mapped like the rhythms of wind over water. The air above the tower is thin and carries a clarity that is almost musical. Sit on the crown for long enough and you hear the sea change pitch, not just the angry crash of a wave or the whisper of a swell, but a layered chorus of currents, each with a distinct knot of tone. Beneath that chorus, if you close your eyes and hold your breath, you can feel the stone's own voice, a deep sustained hum under the world's noise, old as tide, and older than the first nets. People come here at certain times. In some years, during late autumn when the winds turn, fishermen and those who still call the stack a shrine come to leave offerings, a tossed coil of rope, a bowl of pebbles, a strip of cloth knotted and hung from a thorn. They do not ask for fish or fair weather alone. They ask the tower to remember those lost at sea, remember the names of small children, remember the shape of a life like it was once before. Tides washed away the record. On one visit, a woman knelt and set small shells in a ring around the crown's pool. She touched each shell as if counting breaths, then laid her forehead to the stone and hummed. The sound she made was a thin, human echo of the tower's depth, low and honest. The rock answered, not with words but with warmth. The wind changed and the clouds rolled in, forming a small private weather that held over the crown like an old quilt. As dusk approaches, light shifts and the tower's sides take on the color of iron. A low fog rises from the sea and kisses the summit. Under that light, the carved grooves slide into new lines of meaning. Spirals morph into the impression of boats seen from above. Circles become whirlpools traced by oars. You begin to see the life that made those marks. Hands tying rope, voices naming the departure of a skiff to open water, the slow placing of nets like prayers. Night here is a slow bowl of stars. Lay back and listen, and the tower seems to breathe with the sea, inhaling salt and exhaling memory. Storms arrive sometimes in winter, like a living thing, sweeping across the horizon and testing the tower's balance. The rock is not unassailable, things fall and shift, but still it stands, not by hardness alone, but by the stubborn geometry of endurance. There is a legend told on these shores, that once long ago, a single stone was thrown into the deep by a heart that could not bear the parting of loved ones. The ocean, moved by this sorrow, rose and formed a shelter from that single stone, rising and stacking itself until it became the first terrace. Each time the sea stacked a stone, it added a story. Each season, new hands and currents carved more. Over time, what began as a grief became architecture. The tower, the people say, is both promise and ledger, built by sea and memory together. When you leave the summit and begin to descend, the wind is softer, almost companionable. It wraps about your shoulders in the same gentle way that the stone has wrapped around its many stories. Down on the ledges, the seabirds shift, and the pool reflects the pale sky. The shore receives your boat with a patient slap of water. At the harbor, an old man waits. His face is weathered like the cliffs. He nods without surprise at the sight of your wet boots and the line of salt at your collar. She remembers, he says simply. She keeps what we forget. His voice has no anger in it, only the quiet of acceptance. He reaches into his pocket and brings out a small square of woven cloth, frayed at the edges. Without ceremony, he ties it to the mast of your boat, and you understand it is not decoration but a small promise that you too will be added to the ledger the next time salt and stone meet. You sleep that night, with the sound of water in your ears and the memory of wind in your bones. Dreams bring images of towers stacked under black skies and small white boats floating like slow, bright birds between them. In the dream, hands lift shells and the tower answers with warmth, and you wake with a sense of having been present in some long conversation between sea and rock. When dawn comes again, the harbor is awash of silver. Fishermen untie lines. Nets are shaken and hung to dry. The tower sits distant, a dark thumb pressing the pale ocean. Its summit is clothed in cloud, the crown hidden, but when the wind breathes, the boatmen glance toward it, and the old man fingers his own tied cloth with an absent gesture, like a prayer remembered on autopilot. The tower has many names in many tongues. For some it is a shrine, for others simply a sea stack. For the children who throw stones at its base in summer, it is a game. For widows and old fishermen, it is a ledger and a promise. All of those names are true. It is a place made of weather and of people. It exists partly because the water carved it, and partly because memory clings to its grooves like seaweed to stone. The sea does not easily forgive the taking of life, nor does it forget or forgive in simple ways. It keeps balance by returning what it takes in new form, in pebbles, in foam, in towers. The stack keeps those returns. It stores the weight of the past in its terraces, and offers it back in a tone you can hear if you know how to listen. You walk slowly along the quay, letting these thoughts fold into you. The harbor smells of kelp and rope, of hot metal and tea. People go about anonymous small tasks, but when a gull flies toward the stack, several heads still turn as if to greet an old friend. The presence you felt on the summit persists here at sea level, as a quieter awareness, less a monument and more a living companion of the water. Part of the tower's power comes from this constant company, the fishing crews, the families, the offerings left like small punctuation marks in a long story. Each time someone returns with a knot of seaweed, a carved pebble, or a letter written on oilcloth and tucked into a crevice, the rock receives it. It does not answer with speech but with effect, a calmer swell, a small clearing in the fog, a day when lines fill without struggle. The assistance is small, practical and unspoken, but the exchange is real and has been for generations. On one quiet morning months later, you stand on the edge of the harbor and watch a storm approach, one of those wide Atlantic things that barrel across in a clean blur. The fishermen haul their gear, faces set, women gather cloths to bind down sails, but one man who had been to the summit, who had tied his own offering to the crown, walks slowly toward the quayside and whispers a word into the wind. It is not for himself. It is for the small child on the boat, for the nets, for the old man whose hands have ached from mending. The storm arrives with sound like a drum roll. Rain lashes the harbor. The tower becomes a silhouette, dark against sheets of gray. The boat rides ugly waves for a while, yet when the storm passes, an hour, a long hour, the nets are full. Small hands laugh quietly, on the quay. The old man steadies his knees and looks toward the stack, and his expression holds something like thanks, the kind that is leveled toward the sea and the stone together. At the Festival of Lights each year, the villagers make a small procession. They light candles shaped like boats and push them into the water. For the procession they wear quiet clothes and move in small, careful lines. At the harbor, families place their candles into the tide. The little flames bob and drift, and then wink out with the ocean's breath. They are small offerings, reminders of a debt paid in light. After the procession, a group of women walk to the shoreline with a basket of shells. One by one they lay them at water's edge. One by one the sea lifts them and reframes them against the basalt, where they will remain clinging to the rock, a new punctuation in the tower's script. The tower watches all of this without moving. It has no eyes, no voice, yet it responds. Small changes occur. Lines in the spray, a hush in a certain quarter of wind. Those who have been to the summit say the effect is not miraculous in a shout, but exact and methodical, like changing ink in a ledger. The tower does not give boons at whim. It keeps what is offered and returns in ways that suit the balance of sea and land. You ponder what it might be to belong to a place that records without judgment, that stacks memory as a sea stacks rock. There is a humility in that thought that sits well in the throat, the idea that being remembered does not require pomp, but continuity, and that continuity is a small daily labor. The tower's great act is its constancy. As the seasons turn, the tower changes its face only slightly, the growth of bird colonies, the darkening of algae, the slow softening of carved grooves by salt and small mollusks. But it never truly alters its form. If anything, the tower collects shells, offerings, names, the warm fat of lamps burnt at its crown years ago. It becomes a palimpsest of lives lived nearby. The stone holds those layers, and at certain hours, when light and wind and mood combine, it allows the stack to speak. When you sit looking toward it at sunset, the horizon a knife of low orange, you can almost hear the stories of those stones, the hands that set them, the storms that tested them, the small heroic acts repairing nets with fingers red with cold, bringing a neighbor's child back from fever, the hands that drew fresh water and left a jar by the rock. The tower does not judge these acts, it archives them instead, and in doing so, binds the living to a long arc of care and dependence. At the edge of the quay, the old man watches the last boat tie up. He touches his locket and hums a tune, the same low line you felt on the summit, and then, with a small grin, steps toward the last of the nets. Grounded in the ordinary, there is a subtle awareness that the extraordinary persists. The tower still stands out there, a patient column rising from the sea, its terraces dark and fenestrated with gulls. It remains, as it always has, a slow, deep ledger of weather and memory. At night, the harbor is quiet. Men sleep in narrow rooms above the cooperage, and women close shutters against spray. You stand at the quay once more, hands in pockets, and look across the black water toward the tower, its crown lost under stars. The wind carries a subtle tone, no longer a hum, but a consonant line that binds stone to sea. You think of the rock at the summit, and the palms that touched it, and the soft warmth those palms found in reply. You think of the small offerings, the lit candles, the shells rewritten in place. You hold the memory of these slow acts like a small, warm stone in your palm. Sleep comes at last, and in sleep you are back on the summit, the wind spiraling like a language. The tower does not leave you. It moves into the shape of your thought, a tall black shape against the pale sea, terraces rimed with foam, carvings like the roots of small birds. In the dream, a child drops a bowl of pebbles into the tide, and the sea returns it polished and round. The tower listens, and the ocean replies. The reply is small and exact, a logic of sea and stone that resembles gratitude. You awaken at dawn to a harbor bright with gulls. The old man stands at the quay looking toward the stack, his face unreadable yet not unfriendly. He lifts a hand and with the smallest motion, mimes placing something on the crown. You understand without words what he means. The tower keeps its ledger, and those who visit it perform an ongoing contract to bring small things and to remember what must be kept. The morning sunlight drifts slowly across the water as you prepare to return to the tower. The harbor is waking in gentle rhythms, ropes tightening, wood creaking in slow stretches, gulls calling in broken syllables. The old man who spoke to you before is nowhere in sight, but the mast he once touched still sways lightly, rocking with the breath of the tide. You step into your small boat, feel its low sigh against the dock, and push away. The sea is quiet today, not still, never still, but quiet, balanced. The waves roll in long, even movements, as if time has been slowed. Light scatters on their surfaces in soft flashes, like sparks dimmed for a sleeping world. The air is cool enough to make each breath feel crisp, but warm enough that you sense the memory of summer lingering on the wind's edge. As you row toward the tower, it rises once more from the Atlantic like a dark shoulder lifting from deep water. The sea stack is unchanged, as it has been for centuries, its terraces layered with salt and stories. But today something feels different. The air is thicker around it, as though saturated with anticipation. Even the gulls circle at a distance, giving the tower its own pocket of untouched sky. The boat drifts naturally toward the same small cleft you used before, the entrance that feels like a doorway. You step onto the stone and begin to climb. The first ledges are slick with dew. Your hands find their now familiar grooves, and there is a strange comfort in returning to these ancient holds. The rhythm of the climb is slow, meditative. It feels as though the tower is measuring your steps, remembering each one, accepting your return like a breath it once released and is now drawing back in. Halfway up, you pause at the shallow pool again. Its surface today is glass-like and darker than before, reflecting the sky as a single unbroken sheet of gray-blue. No breeze disturbs it, no ripple forms. It looks like an eye half closed in thought. When you kneel, the chill of the stone seeps through your clothes. A thread of wind drifts past your ear again, and though no words form, you feel a presence familiar, like a voice that has been waiting to speak at the right moment. You press your fingers to the water's edge. It is warm. The pool has held sunlight somehow, or perhaps it holds something else entirely. The heat of something deep within the rock, something that moved during the night while the sea still murmured around it. You rise slowly and continue your ascent. The terrace is narrow as you climb, the stone dripping in thin curtains of wet green seaweed. Higher still, the voices of the waves drift upward as a faint hum, low and resonant, echoing through the layers of the tower. The sound follows you, sometimes at your back, sometimes at your side, as if the sea has taken the shape of a companion. Reaching the upper terraces, you step onto the crown once more. It is quieter today, still. the wind has softened to something like breath drawn through a shell. The sky above is a pale, brushed silver, clouds arranged in long, slow-moving strokes. The light is gentle. It does not glare or burn. It simply rests on the tower and the water below, like a hand placed lightly on a shoulder. You sit on the crown. The stone beneath you is warm in places, cold in others, temperature skipping like the shifts of an old sleeping creature. You turn your head, and the ocean appears almost endless, an expanse of rolling gray-blue broken only by faint textures. Nearer the island chain, the cliffs rise in that dramatic, jagged way the pharaohs are known for. Their shadows stretch long over the sea, and the sunlight twists through the mist to cast thin, luminous lines across the waves. You breathe. The crown breathes with you. The hum returns slowly, gently, almost shy. It rises through the stone in a thin tremor, gathering strength little by little. You place your palm flat against the surface. The vibration answers. For a moment, it feels as though the tower recognizes the shape of your hand, matching its rhythm to the pulse in your veins. The stone warms beneath your fingertips. It feels steady, alive. The carvings around the summit's pool begin to phase with a glowing softness. They appear not illuminated but deepened, as though wet ink were slowly rising from the stone. Their shapes shift in the light, the spirals seeming to turn just a fraction, the circles widening minutely as though recognizing your presence. Time here does not behave the same as elsewhere. Old things move without breaking their stillness. Something stirs beneath the sea. At first it is only a feeling in the air, a tension, a slight draw inward, like breath caught halfway. Then the waves change. They move in a pattern, rolling not toward the coast or away from it, but around the base of the tower, circling it slowly, as though pulled by an unseen current. You lean forward, listening. The hum from the stone deepens. The carvings pulse once, in a slow exhale. The waves strike the terraces with new intention. Each impact resonates, sending a tremor upward through the structure. It is not alarming. It is orchestrated. Slow, rhythmic, deliberate. The sea is speaking. You close your eyes. The wind winds around your shoulders and settles behind you like someone sitting quietly. The hum rises and falls in its measured pattern, like a chant too old to hold words. The water's voice grows louder, not through noise, but through vibration. Beneath the tower, something ancient shifts. Not movement of creature or stone, but movement of memory, rising from the deep as sound rises from a drum. The hum becomes layered, doubling itself in tone, stretching across the terraces in a deepening echo. The tower hears it. The tower answers. The carvings brighten with a soft glow, forming thin radiant lines that move like breath. A warmth travels through the stone, climbing the central spine of the tower. A thrumming echo spirals outward, carrying into the seas around it, forming ripples that spread far into the horizon. When you open your eyes, the world is different. A single shaft of light has broken through the clouds above, a narrow, soft column of white that touches the crown. It does not flare or blind. It rests gently on the stone, as though recognizing a familiar place to return to. Within it, the mist brightens and dances upward, pulled by a subtle lift you can feel, even in your lungs. Your breath grows lighter, slower. Your heartbeat sinks to the hum of the tower. Your body becomes still, calm, a single part of the tower's long ledger. In that stillness, you finally understand why the tower grew. It did not rise to reach the sky. It did not rise to mark a boundary or a story. It rose for this rhythm, for this meeting of stone and sea, wind and memory. It rose because the world needed a place where its voices could gather and return to one another. As the shaft of light fades, the sea quiets. The waves return to their long, neutral motion. The birds begin to call again, filling the air with small, bright sounds. The carvings dim slowly, settling back into the texture of the stone, but the hum remains, soft, gentle, steady. You rise to your feet and brush salt from your hands. The tower stands before you, unchanged, yet somehow more familiar. A companion, a witness, a keeper of the soft truths hidden beneath water. You descend slowly. Each step feels lighter. Each ledge feels known. The sea welcomes your boat when you reach the shore, pushing it softly against the stone as though nudging it home. You untie the rope with slow, thoughtful hands. The air is warmer. The tide hums faintly against the hull. And as you row back toward the mainland, the tower remains behind you, rising dark and quiet from the sea. But you can feel its presence in your chest, a soft, steady echo, warm as breath and deep as the ocean's oldest memory. It will stand there a long time, long after your boat disappears into the harbor fog, long after the last gull circles home, long after stories are told, forgotten, and told again. Because some places are built not by hands or storms, but by the world's need to remember itself, and the tower remembers you now. The path where silence knelt. The Sinai dawn always begins the same way. In silence so complete it feels physical. The desert holds its breath as the horizon softens from black to a deep indigo, and the first faint streaks of amber begin to rise over far-off ridgelines. The world here wakes slowly, as if remembering itself one grain of sand at a time. You stand at the base of a valley that looks like a corridor carved by centuries rather than by hands. The cliffs rise on both sides in tall sandstone walls, their surfaces smoothed by winds that have wandered this peninsula longer than any memory. And somewhere within this valley lies the path older pilgrims once walked. A path covered with stones arranged in lines so ancient no one remembers placing them. The locals call it the path where silence knelt. You feel the name settle over the place like a second sky. The morning air is cold enough to sting your fingers. Your breath fogs in front of you in small pale clouds. The desert is not empty. It hums with its own quiet rhythm, tiny movements of sand shifting under last night's wind, a distant tremor of stone cooling from yesterday's heat, the low, soft whisper of a breeze climbing gently through the valley. You begin to walk. The first stones appear quietly, small, rounded, arranged not randomly, but in a thin, wavering line that curves through the valley floor. Their placement looks natural at first, but when you kneel and touch one, the truth becomes clear. It is smooth in places where it should be rough, shaped in ways sand alone could not have done. A faint groove runs across its surface, almost like a fingertip pressing long ago. You look ahead. More stones, thousands of them, stretching as far as the valley rises. You follow them slowly. The sand swallows your footsteps almost immediately. Each step is cushioned, soft, and the air around you grows warmer as the sun begins its ascent. The cliffs glitter in gold. The desert's shadow fades, and somewhere above, an unseen bird cries once, the sound drifting like a memory through the enormous stillness. The stones grow larger as you climb. Some are knee-high, some are the height of your chest, all arranged in patterns that make no sense from the ground. Spirals, lines, long ribbons of rock that weave between dunes like threads pulled through cloth. Somewhere inside you, a small quiet awareness awakens. This is not a road, this is a memory. The wind shifts. A warm breeze moves behind your shoulder as though guiding you forward with a gentle palm. The air carries a faint scent, distant smoke maybe, or herbs crushed under old leather sandals. You pause, listening. There is no one here, and yet the air feels lived in. You place your hand on the nearest tall stone. It is warm, warmer than the rising sun can account for, warmer than the desert floor. A faint vibration climbs into your fingers. It is not sound, it is not movement. It is something between them, like a heartbeat faintly remembered, or a voice carried through a wall. You close your eyes. The hum deepens. It feels like breathing. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. You match it without meaning to. When you open your eyes again, the valley looks different. Not physically, every stone and dune and ridge remains where it was, but your awareness of it has shifted. You begin to see how the stones create pathways within pathways, how some lead you forward, while others curve aside to places hidden from your first glance. You choose one of the main rows and follow it. The path ascends gently, weaving between outcrops and winding around shallow depressions in the sand. Each section feels intentional, placed by hands that understood the shape of this land intimately. You walk for what feels like an hour. The sun lifts higher, shadows shorten, the heat grows, and then you see something ahead. A cluster of tall stones rising from the sand like a congregation turned toward the sky. At their center lies a single flat slab, its surface covered in tiny grooves that glint like threads of silver in the light. You step closer. Dust shifts in thin spirals around your ankles. The slab is strangely smooth. Its grooves are arranged in spirals, circles, and long sweeping arcs that resemble wind patterns traced across water. You kneel, careful not to disturb the sand. When you place your hand upon the slab, the warmth returns. Stronger now, enough to travel into your wrist and forearm. The hum comes again, deeper, clearer. This time it carries shape. A melody begins to form in your thoughts. Not sung, not spoken, but structured like breath arranged into soft patterns. It feels familiar, though you have never heard it before. You remain there, listening without ears. When the hum softens, you trace the grooves with your fingertips. They are not decorative, they are directional. They point toward the upper valley, where the stones become larger, arranged in shapes too complex to understand from this close. You rise and continue. The climb becomes steeper. The path narrows. The stones now lean inward slightly, forming a corridor of sorts, a passage of shadow and sun. The wind gathers in this space, swirling in gentle eddies that cool your face and bring a faint scent of distant water. You pause at a bend. The stones here are massive, shoulder height, with wide flat tops and carved spirals etched deeper than before. Some stones tilt inward, others outward, as though arranged deliberately for people moving in a single direction. You lean against one of the stones. The vibration inside it is stronger, a steady, low rhythm that feels ancient. You let it move through you. When you begin walking again, the valley opens suddenly into a broad plateau. The desert stretches in all directions, wide and bare. At the center of the plateau lies a circle of stones arranged so precisely that even the shifting sand has respected its boundary. You approach cautiously. Inside the circle, the ground is different, darker, flattened, undisturbed. You step inside. The air stills instantly, the warmth deepens, the world grows quiet in a way that feels deliberate. You kneel without thinking, because this is where silence knelt. Your breath matches the hum rising through the ground. Your heartbeat slows, the stones glow faintly, only a suggestion of light, a memory of illumination. And in that stillness, the valley speaks, not in words, not in visions, but in understanding. Millions of feet once walked this path, not tourists, not wanderers, pilgrims, men and women who came here carrying burdens too heavy for language. They walked in silence, not because they lacked words, but because silence was the offering they brought. Silence was the kneeling. The stones remember them, and now they remember you. The hum rises, the wind drops, shadows lengthen, and somewhere far behind you, a faint line of sand lifts into the air, tracing the shape of the path you have walked. You stand slowly. The sun is high now. The world seems clearer. The stones wait quietly for your next step. And as you move toward the far end of the plateau, toward the place where the pilgrim path narrows into a final corridor, a soft breeze gathers behind you, warm as breath, light as the brush of a hand on your back. The stones hum again, and the desert whispers one quiet word, so soft you are unsure if you hear it or only feel it. Continue. The corridor ahead narrows between two long ridges of stone, each one tall enough to cast a cool trail of shadow across the sand. The wind slips through these shadows in thin threads, brushing past your ankles like a careful hand guiding you deeper into the silence. The air feels strangely layered here, warm near the sand, cool at your shoulders, warmer again above your head, like moving through breaths left behind by those who once walked this path. The stones on either side grow taller as you proceed, rising chest high, then shoulder high, then towering far above you. Their surfaces are etched with spirals and long wavelines. But here, the carvings become more deliberate. They are angled inward slightly, arranged as though the stones themselves lean in to listen. You reach out and touch one. It is warm again. But the warmth is no longer gentle. It carries a pulse, like a slow, deep drumbeat, resonating from the core of the stone. The vibration moves from your fingers up your arm and settles near your heart with a steady rhythm. The stone is not remembering, it is recognizing. The narrow passage continues ahead. The sand shifts softly beneath your steps, whispering in small sighs. The farther you go, the quieter the world becomes. Even the faint hum of the stones seems to sink lower into the sand, as if retreating to give space to something older, something waiting. You emerge into another open space. This one feels different immediately. The plateau from before held warmth and memory, a sense of presence. But this space, this hollow of stone and sand, feels like a held breath. The air is still, heavier. Shadows linger with a strange clarity, stretching in long deliberate lines across the ground as though drawn by intention instead of chance. At the center stands a single monolith. It is the tallest stone you have seen yet, nearly twice your height, smooth on one side and deeply carved on the other. The carvings on its face are denser, layered in spirals that seem to interlock, cross and rise like currents of air captured in stone. You step toward it slowly. The sand beneath your feet thins, revealing patches of dark, compacted earth. You kneel and brush the surface with your fingers. It is cool, older. This earth has not shifted in centuries. It remembers every foot that has touched it. You stand before the monolith. Its presence is overwhelming, not in weight, but in stillness. A stillness so profound it feels like sound turned inside out. You place your hand on the stone's carved surface. The hum returns instantly, not faint, not soft, strong, steady, deep. The vibration climbs through your arm, into your chest, into your breath. Your heartbeat slows, your mind grows quiet. The desert brightens in your peripheral vision, every grain of sand glowing with thin threads of gold under the sunlight. And then something happens. The carvings warm beneath your palm, and a low note rises through the stone. The sound is ancient, patient, shaped like breath pressed through time. It gathers weight. It gathers warmth. It gathers meaning. You feel the presence of countless footsteps that once moved around this very stone. Slow steps, steady steps, steps taken by people carrying silence as an offering. The monolith holds their quiet. It holds their grief, their hope, their burdens and their release. The hum deepens again. Memories unfold around you, not visions but impressions, cloth brushing sand, feet moving in unison, hands placed gently on stone, breaths measured and calm, hearts releasing what they carried. This place was not a shrine to gods, it was a shrine to silence, not the empty silence of absence, but the full silence of intention, of kneeling, of letting go. Your fingers trace a deep groove in the stone. It is smooth, too smooth, worn by countless hands doing exactly what you're doing now. The wind shifts, the air warms, and then softly, quietly, you hear it. A voice. Not a human voice, not language. The voice of the desert itself. It rises from below the sand, through the core of the monolith, and into your bones. It does not speak in words, but in tone, in resonance. It tells you, be still, Let it rest. Leave what you carried. Your breath releases, long and slow. Your shoulders soften. Your thoughts uncoil. You feel something inside you loosen, something you did not know you were holding. The sand shifts around your feet, forming a faint impression of a spiral, then settling. The monolith's hum quiets, softening into a slow pulse that mirrors the rhythm of your breathing. You stand there a long time, minutes, hours, or perhaps time does not apply here. Eventually the hum fades completely, the stone cools, the desert exhales. You lower your hand and step back. The monolith stands serene, unchanging, carrying the imprint of your touch, somewhere deep inside its layered memory. As you turn to leave, you notice something you hadn't before, a second line of stones, half buried and faint, leading upward along a narrow ridge at the far edge of the hollow, the final path. The wind lifts slightly at your back, urging you onward. You follow the line. The climb is steep but steady. Each step crunches softly as sand gives way to darker stone. The wind grows warmer as you ascend, curling in thin threads around your calves and waist. It feels like a hand, gentle, reassuring, guiding. You reach the ridge. Ahead lies an overlook, so wide and untouched that the world seems to stretch into eternity. The Sinai Desert rolls in endless waves below, a tapestry of gold and shadow, its dunes arranged like the folds of a great sleeping animal. And at the edge of the ridge stands one final stone. It is small, waist-high, simple, uncarved. Yet its presence is unmistakable. It marks the end of the pilgrim path. You approach it slowly. There is no hum here, no vibration, no warmth, only silence. A silence so deep it feels like the desert itself has knelt beside you. You sit next to the stone. The sand is warm under your hands. The air is clear. The entire world appears to be listening. You breathe in. The desert holds your breath. You breathe out. It releases. And then gently, in a voice shaped by wind over stone, you feel the path speak one final truth. Leave your silence here. You close your eyes. You exhale. The silence you carried settles into the sand, and the desert accepts it with the tenderness of something very old. When you rise, the wind moves lightly around your shoulders, not urging, not pulling, just staying close, as though wrapping a shawl of gratitude around you. You walk down the ridge slowly. The stones below hum faintly in farewell. The valley expands around you once more. And as the last curve brings you back toward the world of sound, the desert gives you a single gift in return. It's silence. A silence that kneels with you, follows you, and remembers you, long after you leave the path behind. The stones that burned without flame. The air over Sardinia's interior mountains feels older than the hills themselves, heavy with heat, even before the sun rises, thick with the scent of myrtle and stone. Dawn comes slowly here, burning through the horizon in soft orange sheets that spill over ridges and into valleys where time has lingered longer than it should. The island wakes not with noise, but with warmth, as if the land remembers fire more clearly than any memory of cool. You walk along a narrow trail carved into the shoulder of a hill. The ground under your boots is red, almost clay-like, warmed from beneath. The air feels warm too, humming faintly not with sound but with temperature. It's a heat that feels purposeful, as if rising from something deep below, slowly exhaling through the soil. Ahead, the path bends around a low outcrop and you see them for the first time. The stones, standing in a circle on a plateau that looks carved by careful hands. They rise almost waist-high, arranged with such intention that not even centuries of wind have disturbed their placement. Each stone is dark, smooth, and marked with thin veins of reddish mineral that glow faintly in the morning light. Locals call this place Sa Petra Ardente, the burning stone, but it is only one of many fire temples hidden across Sardinia's ancient heart. You step closer. The warmth intensifies. It is not the warmth of the sun. The sun has barely risen. No, this is something else. A heat that seems contained within the stones themselves, pulsing in slow waves like the faint breath of a creature that sleeps but does not forget. The circle holds 12 stones, each one shaped differently, but all leaning slightly inward, as if listening to the hollow center of the space. You enter slowly. The air changes. The heat settles around your shoulders like something alive, curling close. There is no wind, no birdsong, just a profound quietness that feels carved as deeply as the stones. You kneel before the nearest one. Its surface is warm to the touch, not burning, simply warm, as if lit from within by an ember that refuses to die. When your fingers move along its edge, you feel grooves, tiny carvings, almost too faint to notice, spirals, lines, curves. Each groove is shallow, yet they hold heat more intensely than the rest of the stone. They pulse gently under your fingertips like veins. You lean closer. The stone hums, not audibly, only through your hand, then your arm, then your chest, until your breathing matches its rhythm, a slow beat, steady as a sleeping heart. The ground beneath you warms, the air thickens, and then, softly, a breeze passes behind you, warm as breath blown over embers. It moves into the circle, twirling around the standing stones before pooling near the center. You rise and step toward it. The center of the circle is marked by a shallow depression filled with crushed red mineral, shimmering like powdered ember. When you stand above it, heat radiates upward, not painful, but strangely grounding, as if the earth recognizes your weight and answers with warmth. The ancients who built this place knew fire deeply, not just flame, but what lived beneath it. They understood heat as a presence, a companion, something sacred. They believed that warmth was a gift from the earth itself, and that the stones were its memory. You leave the circle and follow another path that winds upward along a ridge. The sun has risen fully now, flooding the landscape with gold. The sky reflects on the stones scattered across the hill, turning them almost metallic. Far ahead, perched on a slope that faces the valley, you see another formation, larger than the first. A cluster of stones arranged in long parallel lines, like ribs of some ancient creature exposed by time. You approach slowly. The heat grows stronger. The ground beneath your feet feels like someone buried embers under the soil. Yet the heat never rises to discomfort. Instead, it feels deliberate, almost protective, a warmth that wraps around you, calming the mind. The new formation is massive. 30 stones, arranged in 2 long rows, meet at a rounded end. The entire structure faces east. At its heart lies a slab, dark as cooled lava, with intricate grooves spiraling inward from each corner. You kneel at the slab. Heat radiates from it steadily, and as you place your palm on the stone, something shifts. The grooves faint moments ago seem to shimmer. Your breath falls into a slower rhythm. Heat climbs your arm in pulses. The air thickens again. The world softens. You close your eyes instinctively. The warmth deepens, and the stone begins to tell its story. At first, it is only sensations. You feel a presence behind you, many presences, shadows moving silently, kneeling beside the stone, arranging offerings of red dust and small carved idols shaped from volcanic rock. You feel heat rising from below the slab, not fire, but something else, something ancient, steady, like the slow exhale of the earth, the presence of warmth itself. You open your eyes. The air above the slab shimmers faintly, like mirage heat, though no flame burns and no sunlight reaches this angle. It is warmth made visible, thin waves of distortion rising gently from the stone. You exhale. The slab responds with a deeper pulse of heat, as if acknowledging your breath. The air carries a faint scent, metallic, mineral, distant, like the smell of a stone that has lived too close to lightning. You stand slowly, taking in the formation again. This place was not a temple to flame, it was a temple to warmth, to the hidden fire that earth holds deep within. You move farther up the ridge. The ground grows more uneven, scattered with red stones that look almost burnt. The air remains warm. Your footsteps stir thin spirals of dust that rise, shimmer, and fall, as if lifted by heat alone. And then you see it. The largest of the fire sites. A wide basin carved into the plateau, smooth, circular, perfectly symmetrical. The edges rise slightly, forming a bowl. Standing stones form a wide ring around the interior, leaning inward like watchers. At the center stands a single monolith rising lower than the rest but thicker, as though designed to hold weight or channel something inward. You step into the basin. The world changes. The warmth intensifies, rising from the ground in tangible waves. Your skin tingles, your breath deepens. The air hums faintly, shaped by invisible currents of heat swirling just above the surface. You walk toward the center. The monolith pulses with warmth, stronger than any stone you have touched yet. You place your hand on it, feeling the heat pour through you, steady, deep, anchoring. Your breath slows. Your mind quiets. The stone grows warmer still, and then, without warning, you hear it, a sound, light, thin, like the gentle ringing of heated metal cooling in air. Not loud, just present, clear. The monolith vibrates. You step back instinctively, but the vibration is not dangerous. It is slow, rhythmic. The stone glows faintly, with a soft red warmth, not light, not flame, just the suggestion of ember deep inside. The ground beneath you trembles faintly. Heat shifts, and suddenly your breath no longer fogs in the cool morning air. You kneel, not out of fear, not out of reverence, out of instinct, because the warmth is familiar, because something ancient is awakening, because the earth beneath the stone inhales, and you inhale with it. The hum deepens again. The basin fills with a stillness so dense it feels sacred. No wind, no sound, only warmth. You place both hands on the stone. Heat rushes upward, gentle, embracing, surrounding. It fills your chest, your arms, your throat, not burning, comforting, like sitting beside a hearth after a long winter walk. Your eyes close again, and this time, the visions come. You see figures moving around the basin, carrying bowls filled with glowing red dust. You see lines of people walking silently at dawn, leaving small offerings, shells, carved stones, red ochre, placing them gently around the monolith. You see hands touching the stone. You feel warmth pouring through them. You feel the ground beneath the basin humming with a deep, ancient heat, like the island's heart beating in slow, patient rhythm. The warmth rises once more. You open your eyes. The basin glows faintly, not with fire, not with light, with warmth so pure, it shapes the air around it. You stand slowly. The stone hums. The basin breathes. The world waits, and through the heat, a single realization emerges. These temples were not built for worship. They were built for remembering warmth, for holding the memory of Earth's fire in stillness, for reminding those who walked here that they too carried an ember inside. You step back. The warmth follows you gently. The stones lean inward, and the wind rises for the first time since you arrived. A warm wind, carrying a low, steady whisper through the basin. A whisper the stones seem to answer. You turn toward the far ridge. Another path rises there. The final ascent, leading to the highest fire circle, the place where heat and silence meet. And as you take your first step toward it, the warmth behind you pulses once more, soft, gentle, like the touch of a hand on your back. Encouraging, guiding, inviting, and the stones give one quiet word, shaped not by flame, but by the heat of memory. The path climbs the ridge in long, slow curves, each step lifting you higher into the rising heat of the morning. Sardinia's interior stretches in every direction, rolling hills patterned with olive trees, deep valleys resting in shadow, the distant shimmer of the sea like a sheet of silver pressed against the horizon. But the world feels hushed. Even the wind moves without sound, as though the fire temples have placed a quiet hand over the land. The ground beneath your boots grows warmer as you ascend. At times it feels almost like walking above a great sleeping hearth. Not hot, not dangerous, just steady, ancient warmth rising through the stone. The higher you climb, the more the air changes. It grows denser, richer, holding heat as though gathering breath. It reminds you of standing near a kiln, not the burning mouth where flame dances and roars, but the outer wall, solid and calm, radiating a heat shaped by purpose. Ahead, the final fire circle appears. You stop. The structure is enormous, larger than any you have seen. A wide ring of stones surrounds a depression lined with smooth, dark slabs. Some stones lean inward, others tilt outward. The arrangement feels like a dialogue, each stone answering the one beside it. Beyond the ring, the ridge drops away sharply, giving a clear view of the valley far below. Light spreads over the landscape in warm sheets. The stones catch it, amplifying it, reflecting it in ways that feel almost intentional. You step closer. The moment you cross into the circle, you feel it, a soft pulse in the ground, then another, and another. Not tremors, not movement, just heat, rising from deep below, pausing, then rising again. A slow, patient rhythm. The stones glow faintly, only for a moment, only long enough to let you know they felt you arrive. You walk toward the center, where a low, wide slab sits, smooth as river stone, dark as cooled lava. Its surface curves gently, forming a bowl of sorts, a shallow basin carved not to hold water, but to catch something less tangible. You kneel and touch it. The basin is warm, warmer than stone should be at this hour. Your palm sinks into the smooth surface as warmth flows upward, spreading into your arm, your shoulder, your chest. Your breath deepens. The world quiets. The stone hums, but differently now. Deeper, more focused, as if this circle holds the memory of 1,000 dawns. You close your eyes. The warmth intensifies. The hum settles into a steady rhythm, and then softly, the memories begin. You see figures, not clearly, but in soft shapes made of warmth and dust, moving around the circle in slow procession. They carry bowls filled with red powder. They lay their palms on each stone. They leave offerings of smooth black basalt fragments, carved just enough to show intent but never enough to claim identity. You feel their silence, not the silence of absence, the silence of offering. The fire temples were not built to ignite flames. They were built to honor what fire feels like before it becomes fire. Heat, memory, presence. The basin beneath your hand pulses again. The warmth climbs into your chest. You feel your heartbeat shift, slow, steady, sink to the hum of the temple. The vision deepens. The figures now kneel at the center, their heads bowed, their palms raised slightly above the basin. The air around them shimmers, not with flame, but with heat, so pure it becomes visible. The warmth gathers, collecting in the shallow bowl. It rises like mist, swirling gently, shaped by the slow gestures of the kneeling figures. And you understand, this place was not a furnace, it was a well of warmth, a place where heat was shaped, not burned, a place where the earth's deep fire was honored without ever being taken. You open your eyes slowly. The bowl beneath your hand still pulses. The stones lean inward, listening. The air holds its breath. You rise. The heat moves with you, following your movement like a curious companion. At the far end of the circle, you notice a narrow opening between two tall stones, a passage leading away from the basin. You follow it. The stone walls close in around you, guiding you through a tight corridor that opens onto a hidden terrace carved into the ridge. What you see there makes you stop. 6 stones stand arranged in a crescent facing the valley, but these stones are different. They glow faintly, not with light, but with warmth. The heat rises from them in thin, visible waves. The air above each stone shimmers. You approach the nearest one. Its surface is warm, not hot, but so filled with stored heat that it feels like touching the memory of a campfire, long after its flames have faded. When your palm rests on it, the warmth responds in a soft pulse, a heartbeat, a greeting. You place your other hand on the stone. The warmth intensifies. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts quiet. The stone begins to hum, not audibly, inside you. The warmth travels from your hands to your chest, then spreads through your torso, then settles in your ribs like a gentle flame curled beneath your breath. Not burning, living. You close your eyes again. The hum deepens, and then in a voice made of heat alone, the stone speaks, not in words, in feeling. You feel the memory of Earth's molten heart, the slow rise of heat through stone, the patience of fire that chooses not to burn, the presence that warmth carries without needing flame. When the hum softens, you open your eyes. The terrace glows softly. The valley spreads below you, quiet and serene. You sit on a stone bench cut into the ridge itself. The seat is warm, the air moves gently, the world feels held. And slowly, without effort, your breath matches the rhythm of the land. You remain there a long time. Sunlight slides across the valley. Shadows shift and lengthen. The stones stay warm, steady, alive with memory. When you finally rise, the warmth follows you. You return to the main circle. The basin hums softly in greeting. The stones glow faintly in farewell. You step out of the temple. The air cools only slightly. The warmth inside you remains. You walk down the ridge. The landscape stretches around you like an old companion. The wind carries the faintest breath of heat. The ground radiates a quiet hum. And as you reach the lower path, the fire temples give one final gift, a pulse of warmth at your back. Gentle, grounding, familiar, as if the stones themselves are placing a palm between your shoulders. Not to hold you, not to call you back, to remind you, the fire that never needed flame will walk with you now, and in the soft descending light, you carry that warmth quietly, deep in your chest, long after the stones fade behind the ridge and the valley returns to silence. The pillar that waited for rain. The Namib begins before you realize you've entered it. There is no border, no gate, no sign. The world simply grows quieter, the air thinner, the light sharper. The edges of the horizon stretch further apart. Sand gathers in long sweeps, carved by winds that have walked this land longer than memory. And beneath the deep amber glow of dawn, the desert breathes in a slow, patient rhythm. You stand at the edge of an expanse so old it feels like the Earth's first dream. The sand is cool beneath your boots, but still carries last night's warmth buried inside. A faint breeze flows past your cheek, carrying with it the metallic scent of minerals and something else. Something dry, ancient, almost brittle, like a page that has waited too long to be turned. Ahead, far beyond the shallow dunes, a single dark shape rises from the desert floor. A pillar. Tall, still, alone. It does not glint. It does not cast sharp shadows. It simply stands, as though the desert built it deliberately and placed it in the exact spot where time itself pauses. The locals call it Okruvo, the pillar that waited for rain. You begin walking toward it. The air grows warmer as the sun climbs. Each step sinks softly into the sand, creating muted puffs that vanish almost immediately. The desert does not like footprints. It smooths itself constantly, as if refusing to remember any footsteps except the ones it chooses to keep. As you walk, the pillar grows taller. Its shape sharpens, its presence deepens. You begin to hear something, not sound exactly, but the faintest impression of resonance, like the hush of breath inside a cavern, or the soft groan of distant dunes shifting in their sleep. The desert is moving around you, softly, slowly, deliberately. When you reach the final low rise of sand, the pillar stands before you without ceremony. Dark stone rising straight from the desert floor, its surface smooth, its edges softened by wind. It is taller than you imagined, at least 6 times your height, perfectly vertical, impossible to ignore. Yet it carries no carvings, no grooves, no marks of human hands. It is a stone that stands the way the desert stands, calm, patient, the shape of endurance. You circle it slowly. On its western face you find thin lines of mineral deposit, left behind by long evaporated moisture. The lines shimmer faintly, silver, chalk white, and pale orange, clinging to the stone like ghostly threads. You touch the stone. It is warm, not heated by the sun. Warm from within. A deep warmth, slow and steady, like an ember wrapped in ages of silence. A pulse moves through your palm, not strong, just present, as if the stone remembers being touched, as if it has waited for it. A breeze curves around the pillar and brushes lightly against your back. It is warmer than before. The desert lifts a thin ribbon of sand into the air, swirling it gently before letting it fall around your feet. You close your eyes. A memory begins to rise, not yours, not clearly the desert's, but something old, as if the land is telling its story through temperature instead of sound. The Namib was not always dry. There were seasons, long, slow seasons, when rain clouds gathered on the far horizon and drifted toward the dunes with cautious steps. Rain fell here once, sparsely but meaningfully. Each drop landed like an offering, a blessing, a precious weight. This pillar waited for those drops, not to drink them, not to be washed by them, to remember them. You open your eyes. The air is warmer now. The sky above you sharpens, its blue deepening to a near indigo. The desert breathes more heavily. You walk around the pillar again. This time, you notice something at its base. A shallow hollow in the sand, carved by wind, or perhaps by many years of waiting. You kneel inside it. The sand here is softer, cooler, richer in color. Shadows cling to it, even though the sun is bright. You dig your fingers into the sand. It is cold. Cold like stone pulled from deep underground. Cold like a hidden memory untouched by centuries of heat. The desert exhales. A soft gust moves behind you. You stand again, and lean your forehead gently against the stone. A vibration rises. Faint, deep, ancient. You feel it in your bones. The pillar is humming. Not for you. Not to tell you something. It hums because it always has. Because it remembers things the desert has forgotten. Because the wind has carved long songs through its edges during storms lost to time. The hum changes subtly. It grows warmer, softer, more deliberate. You follow the direction the hum seems to lead, a narrow channel of dunes that stretch beyond the pillar into a deeper, more hidden part of the desert. You walk. The sand turns darker, richer. The dunes rise higher, steeper. The air grows hotter, but it carries a weight, not oppressive, but meaningful, like the heaviness in a room before someone speaks an important truth. As you crest a tall dune, you see something below, a shallow basin carved into the desert floor, smooth, circular, its edges marked by polished stones arranged in a faint spiral. At the center lies a single slab, flat, cracked, and strangely reflective, even though no water touches it. You descend carefully. The basin feels quieter than the rest of the desert, more intentional, as if shaped by something other than wind. You approach the central slab. Its surface gleams softly, not with moisture, with memory. You kneel and place your hand on it. The slab is cold, cold enough to sting, cold enough to make the warmth of the pillar feel like a distant sun. But beneath the cold movement, a faint vibration, a soft pulse, a deep, slow breath. This slab remembers rain. Long ago, when clouds drifted low over the dunes and thunder rolled softly across the desert, this slab held the first drops, and it kept them, stored them. Not physically. Memory is not water. But the slab remembers the weight, the sound, the touch of rain hitting stone. And when the desert grew dry, and the sky forgot how to gather clouds, the slab waited. Centuries passed, the rain did not come, but the slab still waits, because that is its purpose, because something buried below it remembers what the sky once offered. Your breath falls into a slow rhythm. The cold spreads into your fingertips. The hum beneath the slab grows stronger, and something in the desert shifts. A wind rises behind you, not harsh, not cold, not warm, a neutral wind, balanced, measured, like an exhale after a long-held breath. You rise slowly. The basin feels alive now. The stones shimmer subtly in the sunlight. Shadows shift in long, graceful arcs. The desert's silence becomes deeper, more focused. You walk toward the far edge of the basin. There, partially buried in sand, lies a line of stones, smaller than the pillar, darker than the sand, arranged in a path that rises gently up the next dune. You follow it. Each stone you step beside is warmer than the last. The sand around them grows softer. The air grows stiller. At the top of the dune, you stop. Below you lies something extraordinary. A hidden valley sheltered between tall dunes. A place untouched by wind, untouched by wandering dunes, untouched by time. And in the center of this hidden valley stands a second monolith. Smaller than the first, but glowing faintly, with heat, with memory, with expectation. It stands tilted slightly toward the sky, as if looking upward. Waiting for something it has not seen in ages. You descend carefully. The sand here is different, firmer, smoother, almost silky. Your footsteps leave faint impressions that linger longer before fading. You approach the second monolith. This one is cooler, quieter, but its presence is unmistakable. You touch it, cold, still, silent, and then, a faint warmth begins, soft, slow, spreading from the stone into your fingertips. A hidden hum awakens, subtle, barely there. Like the first drop of rain after 1,000 droughts, you close your eyes. The valley breathes, the monolith exhales, the desert waits, and down in the earth below your feet, something stirs, a memory, a promise, a truth carried by stone. The hum rises, one more time, gentle, patient, ancient, and the pillar gives you one quiet word. The hum beneath your fingertips softens, then settles into a rhythm so steady, it feels like the desert's own heartbeat. The second monolith stands quiet now. Its warmth faint but undeniable, pulsing in slow rises that echo the breath of the land around it. You step back. The valley is silent, so silent that even the grains of sand seem to hold still, as though listening for something. The air feels heavier here, weighted with a tension that is not threatening but expectant, like a moment suspended just before rain touches earth. The Namib has not known such a moment in a very long time. You begin to walk along the inner edge of the valley. The sand here is finer than the dunes above, almost powdered. It glistens faintly in the light, as if carrying its own memory of moisture long vanished. As you move, your footsteps leave soft impressions, deeper and more defined than before. This sand wants to hold your presence for a moment longer. Your hand brushes the surface. The sand is cool, cooler than the air, cooler even than the monolith stone. The coolness reminds you of something hidden, something stored beneath the valley's skin. You pause and let your fingers sift through it. The grains slip like silk through your palm, whispering of winds and nights, and waiting, always waiting. You continue around the curve of the valley until you reach a place where the sand looks disturbed, shaped by lines that do not follow the wind's usual language. You kneel and push the sand aside carefully. Beneath it, half buried, lies a ring of stones, small ones, dark as obsidian, arranged in a perfect circle the size of a bowl. Each stone is smooth, rounded, and warm. A faint trace of mineral glimmers at their edges. Pale blue, almost invisible without the right light. You touch the nearest one. Warmth spreads instantly. Slow, deep warmth. Not rising, but awakening. The stone vibrates gently under your palm, humming in a tone so low it feels more like memory than sound. You close your eyes, allowing the warmth to travel into your chest. The hum grows stronger, not louder, just deeper, more present. And something changes around you. The air cools slightly, the sand shifts. The monolith behind you hums an answer. You stand. The valley is no longer quiet in the same way. It is listening, waiting for the next movement, the next breath, the next memory. A faint breeze rises along the dune ridge and sweeps into the valley, curling around your legs like a curious animal. It carries the smell of stone and iron and faraway water, the ghost of rain the desert remembers but has not tasted in generations. You follow the breeze. It leads you toward a narrow opening between two tall dunes at the valley's edge. The passage is steep but passable, carved by time and perhaps by the footsteps of those who walked here ages ago. You climb. The sand shifts beneath you, but with each movement, the slope reveals another hidden stone, small, dark, warm, half buried, but still placed with intention. They mark a path upward, a hidden route. You follow it. The climb grows harder. Heat gathers around your shoulders. Your breath deepens, and then, when you reach the crest of the dune, you stop, because below, on the other side, lies something you did not expect. A vast, shallow basin stretching between dunes, a bowl of earth so wide that its edges fade into the rising heat. And at the center of this basin stands a structure unlike the pillars you've seen. A stone circle built low to the ground, its interior lined with dark slabs that slope inward, creating a depression like a well without water. You descend slowly. The basin is silent, not waiting, holding breath. When you reach the circle, you notice something strange. The inner slabs are cold to the touch, but the outer ring radiates warmth. Two temperatures, two memories, one structure. You kneel. The cold slab beneath your palm trembles faintly. Not vibration, more like the tension of stone learning to speak again. You close your eyes. The hum returns. Soft, layered, ancient, and with it a flood of impressions. Rain collecting in the circle long ago, filling the depression until it glimmered like glass beneath the desert sky. Hands cupping the water, voices raised in gratitude. Stone absorbing the memory of each drop. Then, the rain stopping, dry seasons lengthening, the sky forgetting, the earth remembering. Your breath steadies. The cold slab warms slightly beneath your touch. The outer ring pulses faintly. The circle feels alive again. You open your eyes and notice movement. Thin threads of sand lifting in the basin, swirling around the circle in slow spirals. Not chaotic, not wind-driven, but purposeful. They rise gently, twisting upward, meeting above the circle in a subtle arch of shimmering grains. The monolith in the valley hums in distant agreement. You stand. The basin glows faintly under the sun, not with light, but with heat. The warmth flows in slow waves across the sand, gathering near the circle like mist lifting from a cooling stone. The desert is remembering. You walk to the center of the circle and sit. Your body sinks slightly into the warm sand. The air thickens, the sun softens, and something in the sky changes. High above, where the heat distorts the blue into wavering bands, a thin veil of cloud begins to form. At first you think it's a trick of light, a mirage, a desert ghost, but the shape grows more defined, curling into itself in a slow, deliberate spiral. A cloud, a real one. Small, pale, forming in a sky that rarely permits such softness. The desert grows still. The air cools slightly. The monolith hums. The circle responds. The sand settles. You close your eyes. Your breath deepens. The wind brushes your face. And then, a single drop of moisture touches the center of your forehead. Not rain, not yet. Condensation, the breath of a cloud forming directly above. You open your eyes to the faintest shimmer of moisture drifting downward. A whisper of rain. A memory of rain. A promise of rain. The desert does not need storms to remember water, just the idea of it, the presence of it, the whisper of it. Another drop forms, another, not enough to wet the sand, not enough to darken the basin, just enough to remind the land of what it once knew. The pillar hums again, deep, resonant, grateful. The cloud dissolves slowly, drifting apart into thin strands that fade into the sky. The air warms again. The basin quiets, the sand settles around you. But the memory remains. You rise. The circle feels lighter now. The valley behind feels calmer. The desert feels full, not of moisture but of recognition. You walk back over the dune ridge. When you return to the valley of the second monolith, the stone glows faintly, its warmth steady, its hum soft, as though it has received what it waited for. You touch it once more. Warmth flows into your palm. The stone exhales. The valley breathes. You turn toward the path that will lead you back to the first pillar. The dunes shift quietly beneath your steps. The air moves in gentle threads. The sky feels wider. When you reach the first pillar again, it stands unchanged, steady, quiet, eternal, but warmer now. It recognizes you, not as visitor, not as wanderer, as someone who walked with it through its waiting. You place your hand on the stone. It pulses once, soft, warm, grateful, and the desert gives a final breath around you. Sand whispers, heat settles, silence kneels, and in that silence, the pillar tells you its last truth. Even in the driest places, memory is water. You step away. Your footsteps sink softly. The desert accepts them. The horizon brightens. And long after you leave, the pillar stands, watching the sky, waiting with patience older than time itself, for the next cloud, the next memory, the next whisper of rain. Thank you for wandering these ancient thresholds with me tonight. If the dust, wind, and stone whispered to you, please like, subscribe, and tell us where and what time you're watching from. Your presence keeps these forgotten places alive in the quiet. Until next time, may the world's old memories guide you gently into sleep.